Okay. The government files say one thing, the footprints in Oklahoma say another. And tonight's guests have spent years connecting those dots. Welcome back to The Common Historian, where history meets the supernatural. I'm Jeremy, and tonight we're diving into Bigfoot, not as a mystery to solve, but a story to tell. I'm welcoming back D.A. Wysong, whose brand new Bigfoot book was just released this week. And she's here to talk about weaving Sasquatch into historical fiction. Joining her is John Vandeventer, who moved from Texas to the heart of Oklahoma's Bigfoot country to write his RELICS trilogy. Both have made their career asking, what if Bigfoot isn't just folklore? What if it's part of our hidden history all along? So grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and let's explore how Sasquatch has walked through the shadows of American history. Welcome, DA and John.
Hello,
Thank
thanks
you.
for having us. What? It's good to be back.
Yes, yes, it's been a little bit, but I'm glad to have you back and welcome, John.
Thank you.
Excited to have you on here as well. So, DA, your brand new book is on Bigfoot, just released this week. And what's the title and what's the premises of the book?
Well, it's book 19 of my Monster Hunters of America series. This one is entitled Hunting for Bigfoot, and its setting is up in the Pacific Northwest. And basically, they're coming in from New Mexico, the monster hunters are coming in from New Mexico, where they just assessed that the skinwalker was running rampant around Ghost Ranch Retreat. So they go into the Pacific Northwest as a whole completely different terrain. They're actually following up an investigation, which historically there was a hiker around the early part of the 2000, like 2005, that accidentally got a photograph of a Bigfoot up on Mount Olympus. So they're going to investigate that, which really did take place. So that's where they're at. They're actually in the year 2007, which happened to be a really bad inclement weather there. So they're weathering the weather and they're coming into a Bigfoot terrain, really big. So it's like there's a lot of activity over there up on that mountain. So that's what it's about.
Okay. And like you said, this is part of your Monster Hunter series, and it sounds like
Mhm.
it's it Dina's grandkids. Is that the ones that are
Yes,
down?
yes,
Okay.
yes. The
I just
Robertson boys, yes.
Yes. I know in the past, your past books, you've explored UFOs, dogmen, lots of different places. You said skinwalkers. I know you said it's in the Pacific Northwest, and I just wanted to see, how does Bigfoot differ from the other creatures that you have investigated in your books?
I think Bigfoot actually is what attracted me to cryptozoology. I mean, like John wrote the foreword for this book, and he presented it very well because when anybody speaks about Sasquatch or Bigfoot or a Yeti, it's basically the king of the cryptids. I mean, I think that Bigfoot really pulls in a lot of people that are just curious about if there could be different species that have been hidden from our history. And I think that, like Bigfoot, I think, it's really interesting because me and John have actually discussed this a couple times, and John's a lot more versed in with Bigfoot because he's written the relics and everything. He's been doing that, and he's had experiences with Bigfoot himself. I find it interesting that depending on who sees Bigfoot when they're out in the wild, it could be peaceful, it could be the guardian of the land. Some people say that they are our brothers, At one time, Native Americans say that they sat around the fire and basically broke bread and could telepathically speak with these creatures, which does seem to be a characteristic with anybody that comes into contact with Bigfoot. There is a lot of mind speak and the whoops and the tree, knocking and stuff like that. And then you have other accounts where people say that they're very aggressive. I just assumed that because it was up in the Pacific Northwest that they would be more aggressive than in other parts of the country. But I'm but when I started really starting to do the research, That's really not the case. They're more peaceful on that. And actually, it's not too far from where Ron Moorhead actually captured the sounds for the Sierra sounds, which, he's the one that wrote that book, Quantum Bigfoot. And he didn't have any really scary, you know, experiences from what I know. It was more that it was maybe that they had different abilities or maybe a little more psychically attuned to nature, and that they could that's why he wrote it with the quantum Bigfoot, because it's maybe that they know how to manipulate the quantum physics like that we know as gravity and stuff, not really sure on how things really work, and that maybe Bigfoot is a little more in tune with nature, and that's how they can go in and out. But I found that with research that this in this particular area, they're pretty peaceful actually, and they're very remote. And there's been a lot of activity in those mountains because you get up there with Mount Olympus, and then you have Mount Rainier, you have all the mountain ranges. So you can see, if Bigfoot was going to exist anywhere, it would be in that particular area, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, your series spans from the 1940s to 2007. The earlier books kind of suggested that the government has known about supernatural creatures since at least World War II. In this new book, what does the government know about Bigfoot and how long have they known?
Well, the way that I look at it as far as the government goes is that a lot, well, I found it to be really interesting because when I was doing The Rise of the Cryptids, which is the first book where Deanna Slosh is in Nazi Germany, she ends up being commissioned by Hitler as an architect. And then she has this relationship with him and stumbles upon some hybrid experiments where not Hitler's actually working with aliens in exchange for technology, which I think that they personally were reptilians. And I think Hitler was probably one of the first world leaders that was working with alien species for that exchange. And when she came over to the United States and when she fled from Nazi Germany to come over with intel to the OSS, right before Nazi Germany was closed off, she found out that it was infiltrated in with United States as well. And that I think that basically when the government knows of anything, I think that our government is very interested in the paranormal and the occult. I mean, even with Aleister Crowley, was a lot of people don't realize he was a spy even back as far as World War One. And then they literally worked with Aleister Crowley and with Jack Parsons and with Ron Hubbard because of their ability to open portals and stuff, which is what book two is all about, Unleashed. And I think with the government is they can weaponize something, they will. And
Yes.
so if they have that capability of opening portals, basically that's where the Collins elite came in. So you got from 1944 to 1964 with the book Unleashed, which there was a lot of string events. Deanna's first case was the Roswell crash, which at the time they said it was a weather balloon. With all the congressional hearings and all the information coming out, we're seeing that a lot of history has been suppressed. And I label it as historical fiction, but there's a lot of us that believe that it's more accurate historical, events that have taken place. So I think that when they came in with the Project Paperclip, once the Nazi war was over, and we hired a lot of the Nazis on, basically, you're going to get tried for crimes against humanity, or you can come on board and we're going to set you up here on Plum Island. And I think that's really where I think John would be in agreement with that too. I think that's where a lot of the hybrid experiments came over with the ability and the information that Nazi already was doing over there in Germany. And I think it came over here. The next thing you got Lyme disease, and then you got this island that nobody can get onto or get off of. It's top clearance. Everything's real hush hush. And so basically, I think that's where it really picked up. And then you got the Montauk Project and all that. I mean, it's just all simultaneous. Like you
Yeah.
got MK Mind Control, you just have so many different things going on in that 20-year span that it was like just it was full blast. It's like, which agency, it's just everything all the way around. Project
Yeah.
Blue Book, just all of it, Project Paperclip. And I think that's really where it came in with the hybrid. So I think as far as the Bigfoot connection, I don't know. I think that maybe it's possible. I don't really think Bigfoot fits into that classification so much as I think that they probably have experimented on Bigfoot, but I think that it would be more so in my book, the dog man is probably the thing that they probably why I don't know. But Bigfoot, I think, is many things. And I think it's possible that it could be a hybrid experiment connected to the government. But more so, I think it is basically, I think Bigfoot's a couple different things, but I think it's a presence in the forest, in the mountains, and in the earth in general. And I also think that there's different kinds of Bigfoot or Sasquatch. I think there is not just one thing, there's a variety of it. I just don't think it's one thing or next. But I do think that they're connected to the elemental kingdoms. And I do think that the government's really fascinated with all that, you know? And I think that if they had the ability to take an animal such or a species or, whatever, such as Bigfoot, they would use it to weaponize, just like they
Oh,
do everything. They weaponize everything. That's what
yeah.
they do.
I think I read or saw a video on recently where the government has like released some of their information on some of those experiments you were talking about, like, when they worked with psychics and stuff like that. Yeah. And then, if they're releasing that, how far ahead are they? If they think, releasing that is okay now, how far?
At least 50 years ahead.
Yeah.
And I think that, the Collins Elite, a lot of people don't realize who the Collins Elite, and that isn't even really the real name. But the little bit of information, if you look up the Collins Elite, was basically a group. I think they were hired in the early 1990s or late 1980s. They were hired like a lot of biblical scholars, a lot of people that could read Hebrew, and so basically, a lot of Christians, but a little smorgasbord of people that were into esoteric knowledge. And they hired them to find out how to handle working with demons. Because as far as the Collins Elite goes, once they started working with these aliens for the technology, they soon found out that they weren't exactly what they appeared to be. They weren't exactly, we call them aliens, we call them extraterrestrials, but I believe that they're more interdimensional, which is also the classification of demons and angels. And I think that the Collins Elite, they tried to understand what they were actually working with. I think they felt like they were in a little bit too deep over their head and they really didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Like, we thought you were one thing, but you're another thing. But we want to keep getting this technology. And now we've made this pact with you and we're stuck.
So your Relics trilogy centers around, documented Bigfoot sightings in the area that you live in, Oklahoma. Can you share one real historical sighting from that region that made it into your book?
Well, there's the most famous one, and evidently you hadn't heard of it, is called the Honobia. And it's Honobia. It's a Choctaw word, but it's pronounced Honobia, not Honobia. And this happened in 2000. In fact, if you get a chance, go to Sasquatch Chronicles and listen to episode 11 when they were first getting started. And
Yep.
that one covers that one pretty good. It was basically two brothers, and the house is about 2.5 miles from where I live now. And they started having trouble, not with just one, but with a group of them. They were threatening, taking threatening actions. They were scaring their children, standing in a tree line, whooping at their children and growling and showing their teeth. And so they ended up shooting one because things got really bad. Then after that, everything kind of calmed down. They had a BFRO, Bigfoot Field
Search organization.
Yeah, there you go. How did the Bigfoot guy forget what it stood for? But yeah, the BFRO sent some people out. Their story differs a little from the brothers. Now, I know one of the brothers, he still lives fairly close here. He doesn't live in Honobia anymore, but he swears up and down that as it went on the podcast on Sasquatch Chronicles, that's how it happens. So that's one of the bigger ones. And you get the odd reports and you get stuff happening if you live here. That's funny because I got friends here that lived here their whole life. Some say it's all a big joke, and others swear up and down they've had encounters, they've seen it, and it's real. So it just depends. I think, like, just my opinion on the whole deal, I think if you come out here hunting for it, nothing's going to happen. I think it's kind of like lightning strike, and you just got to be at the right place at the right time or settled in. I think when you're out in the woods and you're moving around and you're disrupting what they're used to, their pattern of life or whatever, I think that tends to have them push away or stay away. If you can get in, not disrupt anything, you might have a better chance. Or if you're not even thinking about it, just go out and go camping. That's probably the best thing you can do. It's just act like they're not there, and they may get curious and you may get one come up on you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's if you're looking for it, they're not, they probably can sense that possibly.
Right. And when I wrote the first Relics book, I based the temperament of my creatures on what they described at the Siege of Honobia. So, yeah, mine are aggressive. Now, I disagree with that. They're a government thing. They've just been reported for too long. They've been reported. The native tribes all have names. From Choctaw, I have two. There's Oklachita, which means big people. And then there's something called Shangpei, which is basically the same thing, but it's evil. So I kind of took that route in my book too. Now, I was never a Bigfoot guy. I wasn't interested in Bigfoot. I was always into aviation. I joined the Air Force. And if I had a paranormal interest, it was UFOs. I guess I just got something about things that fly. But a friend asked me to write a short story. That's how all this writing books got started. And I kind of got into it. And then I was getting feedback from him. He was a big Bigfoot guy. I wasn't. And then he had something come up. And I thought, well, my sister wanted me to finish it. And I was in Texas. So I started looking around and started finding out about all the activity in LaFleur County, Oklahoma. So I used this area for the first book. And like I said, I based the behavior off the Siege of Honobia reports. Next thing you know, the company I work for, we got all the contracts for the Choctaw Nation, all their casinos for all their printers and fax machines and copiers. And I was a copier tech, and we were coming up from Texas, getting home late, whichever one of us had to come up here. And I was walking by the president's door one day, and he was telling the service manager, we got to hire a guy in Oklahoma. And I just stopped and said, hey, I'll move up there. And they, you will? I said, sure. I know exactly where I want to go. So here I came in 2018. But the funny thing, I don't read DA's books. I've read one of her books. And it's not because I wouldn't enjoy them. It's because we are running parallels. So, I mean, just, it's almost like we're on the same track. I've got, like, my second book, it flashbacks to World War II and just after World War II. And I've got Germans, I've got them down in New Schwabenland, and, and I've got Operation High Jump. And when I hear her talk about it, I'm like, oh my God. So after she gets her series finished and I'm completely done with Relics, I want to read her whole series and see how she did it. And you were talking about how to describe it. I have a friend here. He has a little podcast that lives on the other side of the mountain, but he calls my books faction. So I always took that as a compliment. I've never heard it before. I said, okay, I'll take that.
We're planning on writing a book together. We're going to collaborate on a book. Probably by the summer we'll start up. So I'm excited about that.
I'm different from her, and my wife was Messianic Jew and did the synagogue thing for years and years. And when I met her, I wanted to take her out to dinner and this and that. And I met her and I think it took like 6 months to get her to go to dinner. Now, granted, she was She'd been a widow for 12 years and she raised her kids. She had 2 teenage daughters. So I can understand, she wasn't the girls came first, and that's highly understandable. And they were high school age. But finally, after 6 months, I got her to agree to go to dinner with me. And I lived in Sulphur Springs, Texas. We were going to Texarkana. They had better restaurants and 100-mile drive. And she's saying, "So you wrote a book?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, what's it about?" And I didn't want to tell her because it took 6 months to get her in the truck. And I wanted to tell her I wrote a Bigfoot book and have her, slam on the brakes, take me home. That, shortest date ever. Finally, I told her, and she's like, "Huh." She goes, "I always thought if those things existed, they might be a form of Nephilim." And I said, "Nephilim what?" And she said, "Nephilim. Have you ever heard of Nephilim?" I said, "No." She goes, "I always thought it could be a form of that, maybe." And I said, "Well, what is it?" She goes, "Well, read Genesis chapter 6 and then come back if you have any questions." And then, she reads the Torah daily and she reads the Bible daily. She's into studying. So it's kind of nice because I can just yell across the house, "Hey, what's the Hebrew word for this or that?" So I decided to take that route with my novels. My Bigfoot, I've got natural Bigfoot, the Ochlachita, the Champagne. Well, they're products of a hybrid from a fallen angel named Regal, who supposedly existed back in the Mesopotamian days. He was a Mesopotamian god back around the time of the Tower of Babel and all that, and was worshipped by those people. And he's interfering. And so his touch is in everything. And that's where the books have been going. After RELICS 3, I started another series called The Fall, which is Hebrew for fallen. And it takes place in CERN, at the CERN facility on the border of Switzerland and France. And as I'm writing them, man, I could use this character and that character from RELICS. Found a way to write them in. So basically, The Fall is just like RELICS as well. It's just like the ending series for it. It's been a lot of fun. I never saw myself as a writer or anything like that. But after I wrote that first book, I kind of got a taste for it, the storytelling part anyway.
What did you say that the god in Mesopotamia, what was the name that you used?
Nergal.
Well,
Nergal.
it's interesting because the last time we spoke, I told you that I woke up with that name Chico, and I looked it up, and it's actually a spirit, like as ancient as the creator, that went back to Mesopotamia, and it's basically, really, you could call it an archon or a demon or Satan. It translates to that, and it's a soul eater. And that's
Right.
what I incorporated in my story. I came up with that. It
And
came
also, Jeremy,
name.
we're using the same UFO. My UFOs are interdimensional because that was always my interest. So I got them the story as quick as I could by book 2. And they're interdimensional. Now, I'm using the ancient Hebrew history or thoughts on there's fallen angels and their demons, and they're separate. Fallen angels are fallen angels. One of the angels that rebelled and was thrown down, cast down here. And the demons, actually, as the Hebrews say, they're the disembodied spirit of the Nephilim that died in the flood. And that was another thing I found interesting was, I grew up thinking, I always had a hard time with Christianity because, well, God loved us so much. Why did he flood us out? And why did he order the death of these tribes, men, women, children, even their animals? Well, it was more about Nephilim. It was more about the takeover of the human race by the Nephilim, and the human genome was just coming up on getting bred out. And so something had to be done. And then as far as telling Caleb and Joshua, hey, I want you to take out that whole tribe, take the women, the children, the animals, everything. It wasn't because he was a cruel, unloving God. It's because they had that Nephilim gene again, and a redeemer, Jesus, couldn't come and be born to a woman with fallen angel DNA. So, it's funny, as I started realizing that, light started coming on. And not only did it help me with my faith, but it just started feeding me on something, man, I can use that for this story and that. And so we do run parallel to a point. But it's funny, she's got her beliefs and take it that way. I have mine, take it my way. But we're running just neck and neck down the same track. And
Absolutely, because I can totally relate to John's beliefs and the way that he portrays that through his books. And I think the only difference might be his is a little more towards the Christian faith, and mine's more on an esoteric level, which it combines into that, especially when you go into the Hebrew text.
and that's why I'm looking so forward to writing a novel with you. And we each just write our characters how we want. So it
Right.
ought to be interesting when we get there.
I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yes. And you know, on the Nephilim, I do believe that we're really witnessing right now, not just because you mentioned the first incursion of the Nephilim, then the second with Caleb and Joshua. And I believe that we are living in a day of the third incursion of the Nephilim.
Yeah, I do too.
Living in it right now. It's right here with us right now. And I think that and actually that comes through the book that Dr. Dennis Carroll wrote with the Jewett City vampires. I actually addressed that very subject in through the pharmaceutical companies. And I think we all know where I'm going with that. Because it's basically tampering with human DNA. They're just doing it on a different, more technical level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a note. It was funny, John. You actually answered my second question without me asking. Oh,
well, I was about to apologize for taking 20 minutes.
Oh, no, it's fine. You covered.
No, it was fascinating.
You covered the exact question I was going to ask you without me asking it. So it was great.
I love it.
Your book suggests Bigfoot isn't just a creature. It's tied to kind of government conspiracies and UFOs. What's the historical evidence to point to like a cover up for Sasquatch?
Well, I can only give you up until modern day.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things is if there is a cover up, it's mainly to, well, like, here's a perfect example. Remember the spotted owl?
Yeah.
Can you imagine having to close all the national parks and stuff because all of a sudden, hey, there's a bipedal human-like creature living in the mountains. Here it is. Here's proof. Next thing you know, it's protected. Nobody can go to Yosemite or here or there anymore, because you can't endanger the species or this or that. Now, I don't know if that's it. Or also, if you look at like the missing 411 stuff, those books were hitting about the time I started writing my first book. And I was like, oh my goodness, it made sense to me that, well, what's going to happen if people figure out there's a big, hairy, ape-like, man-like creature running off with people in the woods, and the government's been letting it happen. So it's like anything else that's supernatural. I think they like us on a short leash. I think they like that leash short. They don't want us seeing too much of other things. When your imagination starts becoming reality, you start looking for other solutions in life than government. So not that I'm anti-government. I'm not. I served in the military for 16 years, so I was a government employee, but I am for small government and not interfering in our lives. And I just think that they're saving themselves from lawsuits or.
I think it's way deeper than that.
Go with it.
Okay. You know what I think it is? It's just like when they took the person of interest with Aleister Crowley, Jack Parsons, when they were opening these portals. I believe with all my heart, they are aware of how advanced these creatures are. And I think that that if they were to do any hybrid experiments, it would be to better understand that and to duplicate that. Those creatures have been with us since the beginning of this earth. Imagine having access to these creatures that can go in and out of portals, that can come in through orbs, that can disappear, that can camouflage themselves as a boulder. And then the next day the boulder's gone and it really wasn't a boulder, it was Bigfoot. You know what I mean? Or Sasquatch, however you want to do it. Or they can go in and out. They do not want people to be aware of that. Because imagine what and that's actually came through with some of the reports through the Collins Elite. Imagine the capability of what our U.S. government, if they can study these creatures and understand Sasquatch, imagine how they could weaponize that information to go to war. We would no longer have to have airplanes to transport soldiers over to Iraq.
Easy world without airplanes. No, can't go there.
We can go through portals. We can just line up the men and they will be there. If they can understand quantum physics, if they can understand how these creatures are going in and out of our realms, and they can weaponize that, we're even going to be more powerful.
Well, I could see them being a spiritual thing, or I could see the portal thing, because I've seen the disappearing tracks. So
Yes.
it comes down to somebody's either hoaxing the tracks or they stepped off into someplace else. And there's no other explanation for it.
I think
You think they're more of a spiritual thing than a natural thing? They may be both. Who knows? It's like people's experiences. Some people get attacked or get chased out of the forest. Some people have a positive interaction with them. Some people have I'm sure I've seen one run across my property line one night. And I thought, well, there you go. They exist. And it was funny. I almost lost complete interest in it. I thought, okay, they exist. What's the big deal?
But why can't they be both? Because we're both spiritual and physical. So why? I mean, I hate that when people say, well, they're supernatural or they're this, they're flesh and blood. Or they're both. We're both.
Go walk through a portal.
Well,
you're not going to go walk through a portal today, and neither am I. And when I say supernatural, I mean they're doing a beyond natural. What's natural for us?
Right. Oh, I agree.
If I could walk out in the woods right here and hit a portal right now, bang, John's supernatural.
But just like you did like you incorporated Operation High Jump, there are humans that are going in and out of portals. You know that because you wrote about it. That's that's the way I understand Operation High Jump to be about. So we are weaponizing that technology. We've got jump rooms. I think there's some in LA as we speak, and who knows where else they are. And that would substantiate my claim. They know that these creatures are physical, flesh and blood, that they also have the supernatural capabilities, like you pointed out. I think they are spiritual beings like we are. I think that they can die just like we do. I think they know how to manipulate our Earth's atmosphere. I think that I just think that they haven't been tarnished like humans, if that makes sense. I think they've chose to remain living on the land. I don't think we're smarter than them by any means. I think that they are very close to our DNA, with Dr. Melba Ketchum and even with David Pilates and different researchers that have gotten this different DNA. I mean, it comes back pretty close to human DNA. There's like that 1% that they can't identify, which would substantiate your claim about them being Nephilim. That could be a true case because, just think about it. Angels and humans have to be able to match up to be able to even mate, to breed.
As far as I know, on the Melba Ketchum thing, and I've spoken with her, and I've got, in fact, a lady that used to live in his house, was good friends with her, spoke with her a lot. It was a mitochondrial DNA, as far as I understand, was human female mitochondrial, and then the male DNA was unknown.
Which would be a perfect example of being the father.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have to be somewhat compatible to that species of the creature that we know is Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know you guys touched on it a little bit. Both of you have World War II as kind of a theme in your books. How does Bigfoot kind of connect with the World War II era? Or how would you guys say that,
you want to go first, Deanna, or you want me to go?
You go first.
Okay. My backing into World War II in the second book, wasn't so much. The second book is also where I introduced two kinds. I have the Oakland cheetah, which is, you know, kind of the animalistic living in the forest. And then I have the Champagne, which are coming through with the fallen angels. And the reason I backed up is I needed Operation High Jump, and I needed the UFO stuff, Kenneth Arnold, Roswell, all that's in that first book. So I started all the way back to Operation High Jump. The Navy fighter planes, F-8 Bearcats I use, they're still prop planes. They get attacked by these flying saucer type craft. And one of the pilots, who happens to be an old man in Honobia in RELICS, he was a pilot back then. He managed to shoot down one of those saucers. One of the cruisers has a crane, and it gets it out of the water before it sinks. And they find a German pilot in it, a dead German pilot. So that's what I was using to get back. And so they're thinking, well, what's this German pilot doing here? What are these advanced craft? And also, where's the occupant that was in the back? Well, the occupant that was in the back was a gray alien. And he managed to materialize out of there, whereas the pilot hit the water. And so it goes back to this German pilot and what he did in World War II, and basically comes out in Relic 3 more. And I'm trying, you know, I don't know if you got UFO wise, you've heard the Kecksburg, have you heard of the Kecksburg UFO crash in 65?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, well, I connected that to the Nazi bell, and this German pilot and his friend were brought down to Antarctica at the end of World War II on one of the brand new German subs they had. And one of them was in the bell, and the other one flew at the flying saucers. The one ended up getting killed. The one in the bell comes out at Kecksburg, because if you ever read about the Nazi bell and the Kecksburg craft, they're identical. How they're bell shaped. They got hieroglyphics on the skirting around the bottom. And so I use that as a time machine. And he comes out in 65, and he accidentally, no, he wants to get away from the golf. He steals the thing, crashes it near Kecksburg, gets out. He's a German guy, finds a Volkswagen and hauls rear for Washington, D.C. He's going to turn himself in. He gets to Washington, all of a sudden the tourists show him, hey, everybody my age, everybody that understands me is 20 years older than me now, because he's still in his 20s, and all his World War II brethren are all in their 40s. So anyway, without going, I want to leave something for the readers. So,
yeah,
but that's how I used it. And in the second two books, Bigfoot's more of he's still pretty heavy in the second book. By the third book, Bigfoot's still there, but it's not the main. The story revolves mainly around the characters and their gall, and he's using the hybrid Bigfoots, and then the natural Bigfoot kind of have suffered at the hands of these other ones. So they're up in arms wanting to kill the hybrid ones. Okay, I'm going to shut up.
Okay. But that's good. That's very intriguing. I mean, for me, I think, in my Rise of the Cryptids, that's when Deanna has that moment of realization that Hitler is indeed part of the atrocities of the experiments on humans. It's all integrated in with the animals, and she actually sees a Bigfoot on the table. So just imagine if they could reduplicate this hybrid creature that we know is Bigfoot or Sasquatch, and that has the capabilities that it does to be able to go in and out of portals. And so with mine, it was more on the mental level of what Bigfoot could was capable of, as far as tying it into the MK mind control. You know what I mean? And the remote viewing. I mean, I think that, that could be a probability that Bigfoot would be able to incorporate, because he does do the mind speak. So that's the part of the brain of Bigfoot, not just the actual creature, but the whole thing on a whole would be what was intriguing to these diabolical scientists and Nazi doctors that were doing all these atrocities.
Okay, you know how World War II, Germany came along with all this jet and rocket technology, you know, and it was so advanced for its time that even in the early 50s, we're still firing up B-2 rockets. You know, that's our main rocket, our
Right.
workhorse. Okay. And in 1938, there was a UFO crash in Black Forests of Germany.
Yes.
Okay. And then you come to the States, we couldn't do anything with the rockets, but we managed to split the atom and get the atomic bomb. And now Roswell didn't happen to 47, but there was a crash in Cape Girardeau, Missouri in 1940, very similar to Roswell, same kind of ordeal. And to me, it's almost like they dropped one set of technology one place, the other set of technology the other place. And it's almost like they're wanting us to kill each other, you know. Let's see what you can do with that, you can do with this. We end up enemies using those weapons. Well, we didn't use them on the Germans, but we would have if, you know, there'd been no other choice. But that's just an interesting scenario to me.
Well, I mean, but if you take that back to the eyes on Aleister Crowley, that's what I'm saying. He was a he was a person of interest, and he actually was a spy for the World War One, and he was opening portal, and then he's got the little guy Liam, I think was his name, or I am, that looks just like an alien gray. He was
He
opening
was also a
portals
freak.
already. He was opening these portals already, and then you go all the way up into when Jack Parsons was doing the Babylon workings and mimicking everything that he learned from Aleister Crowley. And you know, that man was not an educated man, but yet he understood jet propulsion. If you study Jack Parsons, as in the book of Unleashed, it goes back to his childhood. He made a pact with the devil when he was 8 years old. He was opening portals in his bedroom. And this man he got a little bit past high school, and I think he was like kind of off the radar, working with a university, but not really getting a degree. And he figured out jet propulsion. That was an exchange of technology and interest for basically working with the occult.
What Crowley was, yeah, Crowley was, he was deep into it.
And that's
Yeah,
what
he
Jack
was
Parsons.
deep into wiki stuff.
Right, Jack Parsons was right there with him. That's what I'm saying. And Ron Hubbard. That's what they were doing. They were opening portals with sex magic and everything like that. They understood the occult, and that's what the government was fascinated with. A lot of people don't know that the government at that time even they had hired on Sybil Leek, which was a witch from UK or from Britain at the time. And that's because they understood the occult practices, and that's what they were using, and a lot of people don't realize this. In NASA is actually located in the very part of the Mojave Desert where Jack Parsons did the Babylon working magical ritual to open the portal. That is where NASA sits to this day.
Who was the female you brought in from Germany
Oh,
in your book?
Deanna Slosh?
It's funny, we did the same thing there too. I used Maria Orsic, the head of the Brill Society. So
Yes.
it's weird how neck and neck we were running. I knew you for like a year and a half before I read one of your books. And when I read your book, I was like, I put it down. I said, nope, because we're going to end up plagiarizing.
Like information that we're getting because I don't know about you, but I've talked about isolating myself and just trying to really connect with what spirit is trying to bring into me. That's why I try not to do a lot of podcasts or pay attention to what everybody else is saying. I understand about the reading of the books because I think
I'll do the same thing. I'll
we're
get
getting
stuck.
the same information channeled in a different
I'll get stuck. It's just mine are a little more, they're not, I wouldn't say they're Christian fiction, but they're Christian themed. So I always, when I get hit in the head with the solution, I like to say God gave me a download, and I go to it. So
Well, that's how I get like I said,
yeah,
when I had the dream, I get stuff in my dreams. I get stuff like I'll just wake up or I'll be doing something and I'll have this cha-ching moment. If I had my TV on all day or listening to what everybody else was saying, that wouldn't come in as authentic, I don't think. So I really think we're tapping into the same power, whether we call it the same thing. It's definitely divine, which is exciting.
yeah. Jeremy, you ever going to have two authors on at the same time again?
It's fine.
You look like a pilot looking for the ejection handle.
My role here is to kind of let you guys do your thing.
He's used
No,
to that.
we just, I've never done a podcast with a co-guest, and we just did one last Wednesday. It was last Wednesday. We were on Jessica's show together.
Yeah, I was pretty used to it. Like DA was saying, I had her and Ron on, Ron Murphy Jr., and I kind of let them do their thing. They went.
Well, the crazy part about all this is I never saw myself as a writer. And then when I started researching Bigfoot for RELICS, I got into it. And I started reading out Rod Moorhead, this guy, that guy, this guy. And then 4 years later, I'm standing on the stage speaking at the Bigfoot Festival with Ron Moorhead, Scott Nelson, M.K. Davis. And I'm just like, how'd this happen? And it was really weird. And then, my books were doing well enough where I thought, well, if I go ahead and claim my Social Security, want to make for the books, be making more money than I'm working, why not do it? And then, Jared, we're very sorry to hear about your mother. I started feeling bad a couple of years ago. And then this past year, I've had a big battle with cancer. I know what your mom went through. I know what you probably went through. It's rough. It's rough on the person going through it. It's rough on the family. You have my condolences.
And John's getting ready to go through another bout of something.
Yes.
Proton.
Can only wait.
You sound very excited about that.
Yeah, I've had the chemo, I've had the radiation. There's just a little bit left, so let's go do this other thing.
Yep. Well, hopefully that turns out well. And
been worse than the disease. Oh my goodness, man. Yeah, every time they gave me chemo, I ended up in the hospital for at least a week, and it was not fun. In fact, Labor Day back in September, that was the first holiday of 2025, or since last Christmas, I hadn't spent in the hospital. Started Christmas Eve, and just every holiday I was hospitalized.
That's terrible.
That is.
We're going to knock this out. This is going to get it.
Yeah.
We got books to write.
Yep. Absolutely.
We got to get that truth out there. The truth is out there.
Well, I just have a couple more questions and then we'll wrap things up. If Bigfoot is real and has been hiding in America's forests for centuries, what historical event or period would prove it to everyone if we found something? And, where should we be looking in historical records?
There's a lot of tales, but there's no proof. There's like the Ape Canyon thing in 24. There was that one, somebody caught a young one they called Jocko somewhere out west. There was one supposedly in Russia, a female. But I don't think you're going to find anything that proves they exist. I mean, hardcore, because it is the subject so flighty. I mean, you're not going to get people to believe until they see one. And unfortunately, and I hate to say it, because I love to shoot. I got my fair share of guns. I love to target shoot, but I'm not a hunter. I don't like to kill things, but I think the only way you're going to prove it is somebody's going to bring one in one day. Otherwise, I don't see how you're going to prove it, especially now with AI. I mean, have you seen the videos people make? It's like you don't even know what to trust anymore, so I don't think you can be able to do it unless one volunteers to walk in and get a physical.
I don't think. I think that if somebody took a poll, I think there would be more people today that would say they did believe in Bigfoot than the ones that would say they didn't. And I think between the Patterson-Gimlin film, which was almost a minute. I think it was 59 seconds. And the Sierra sounds, I don't see how anybody could unequivocally say that that does not exist, that there is not another species out there that exists.
And those are still the
notice
gold
Bigfoot-
standard.
Pardon?
Those are still the gold standard. The Patterson-Gimlin film,
Yeah.
Ron Moorhead Sierra sounds. That to me,
Yeah.
that's still the gold. Nothing compares to those evidence-wise that I've seen.
Yes. And I don't think, I can't remember when that was, John. I think it might have been right after the 1924 reference that you made. But didn't somebody actually have a body and they put it on ice or something? Don't you remember that? I can't
Yeah,
remember.
I've heard of that, but then again, I've heard that's ended up being a hoax. So I don't know. It was the Iceman, the Minnesota Iceman, or something like that.
So let's
I've
just
seen
take,
pictures
yeah,
of it.
that was the one. But let's just take the Sierra sounds. I'd say that in itself is the best evidence that we have that there is another species out there that we cannot identify, that experts around the world all agree this is something this is an unknown species that is very close to human, can articulate like a human in nature, but actually is more advanced than a human. I mean, that's what the consensus is. And then you got the same thing with all the experts that people have studied, anthropologists. It's like Dr. Jeff Meldrum. He was a primatologist and an anthropologist, and he concluded that Bigfoot did exist with this creature with all the footprints. I mean, you look at people study this Patterson-Gimlin film in universities. I mean, these are archaeologists that are saying, they did the Gates method. This was not a costume. This was not a human. There is no way that was. So you can call it whatever you want. It was a different species than what we are or anything that we know. So I think the evidence is there already. People just just like the existence of God. We see that every day. Most of us that believe, but you're always going to have non-believers. But I think I stand by this. There are more people that believe in Bigfoot than not.
Yeah.
And then you got a lot of people that have seen footprints and have seen Bigfoot. A lot of people don't see God, but a lot of people believe in God.
Yeah.
I don't think having the body is really going to do anything, because even if you had a body, they would have the people that don't want to believe and mess up their belief system. They would have a reason why that wasn't really Bigfoot. So I think between the sounds and the film, we've already got our evidence. And then you have all the experiences. And then you got all the experts collaborating, saying these sounds from the Sierra sounds are definitely something that we don't know. You can put a name on it, or let's just call it Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I think the evidence is already there.
Yep. There is quite a bit out there. It's just, I wonder how much has been actually suppressed too.
Oh, yeah.
So kind of, what's next for both of you? I know you guys talked about a book eventually. I know you have your new book coming, or just came out. What's kind of next for both of you? Any new projects?
I'm going to be working on the Hunting for the Men in Black. I'll be starting that next week, and that will be coming out by January. I'm pretty excited. That's in Texas. That book's going to be in Texas, John. We'll have to meet up and talk and see what you know about the Men in Black, which I do believe has a connection to the government. And I also do believe that they are extraterrestrial in origin, and I think that they are connected with the UFO phenomena. What about you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I think they're connected to the government. I don't think they're human at all. But I do think they're connected to the government in some way.
Yeah.
The government may be doing what they're telling them to do. It's the other way around. So.
And then I'm really excited to announce that in January, after I get the Men in Black out, I'm going back to my original first two books, Rise of the Cryptids and Unleashed. And I just got a person that I've followed his work for probably 25 years, Andrew Gow. He is a London based writer, lecturer, TV personality. He does the Conspiracy Hour. And I've been, you know who he is, John? He's really, I've seen him on so many documentaries, and he agreed to write the forewords. He specializes in Nazi Germany history. He's really big into architecture, Tartarian civilization, ancient civilizations. He's been on Forbidden Knowledge, Unforgotten History, just different documentaries and stuff like that. So I'm going to do a second edition on both of those books and just kind of tighten up some things, maybe add a couple things in. And then I'm going to convert them into a co-pilot screenplay, and I'm going to uh probably try to start seeing if I can get a producer or a director to pick this up as a series for TV, The
Wow.
Monster Hunters of America. So that's my big plan for 2026 and to finish the series out by June.
Wow.
Jeremy, I'm actually trying to finish up in the fall too. My second, well, actually, it's my third series. I have the RELICS series, the Shadow Chasers, which is a young adult series, which takes place parallel to the RELICS series, same area. And I've got my very first RELICS book with a new publisher right now. We're cleaning it up. I've made a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of typos and things like that I want to get rid of. So I'm doing that. Going to knock out the fall too. And then I'm going to do one more RELICS book, RELICS 4, Bridge in the Fall, just to officially tie RELICS to the fall. And then after that, I'm freewheeling. I want to write some World War II aviation novels and things like that. So I want to write a World War II vampire story. So I got some other
Love
thoughts
that.
coming down the pipe.
I love that.
Yeah, you have a lot. Both of you have lots planned and going. Oh,
Actually, I'm
yes.
adding a book to my series, and I'm going to be introducing Ronald Murphy, and it's the Hunting for the Squonk, and it's going to be settled in Chestnut Ridge in Pennsylvania. And he actually asked me to consider doing that, so I'm adding him into the book, and that he is going to be meeting the monster hunters of America, and they're going to be in Chestnut Ridge, and they're going to be hunting for the squonk and tying that into Bigfoot will be there as well as some Thunderbirds, and there's going to be a whole, but it's going to be a party, man.
Oh,
I'm super excited about that.
that sounds really exciting.
Yeah.
One last question for you all. For someone that's never read any of your books and they're looking, for cryptids and Bigfoot, where should they start? Which book of yours should they start with?
Me, of course, if you're going to start the Monster Hunter series, Rise of the Cryptids would be the first one to start with because it's the origins. And it actually goes all the way into going to Antarctica with Admiral Byrd. And then she flees towards the end of World War II. If you really are into UFOs, Soul Catchers, which is the book that John wrote, and I think he liked it pretty well. He did love the cover. I know he wrote me a really good review. And that's a really interesting book on its own merit because it ties in the concept of the hitchhiker effect, where it starts out with a paranormal investigation. The investigator ends up having a near death experience. She actually comes into contact with what I call soul catchers, which are demons. They look like alien grays, and then her journey back into the planet. And so, what they thought was a traditional residual haunting of what the case that she's in is indeed UFO abduction. So, it ties it all in. It's got all the stuff. It's a novel. It's a really fun. So that one's a really good book. And I got a Ghost of Northern Kentucky, which is historical. It's actually nonfiction, and it's about the local area here and the ties of we are the original Sin City in Northern Kentucky. So way before Las Vegas was hit. So it's just all the little short stories of like Bobby Mackey. It ties into the syndicate and that kind of thing. But I highly recommend the Monster Hunters of America because it's got everything from the Nazi Germany to Bigfoot to Dogman, the Rougarou, the gargoyles, the skinwalkers, the vampires. I mean, you name it, it's gonna be. If there's a cryptid you're looking for, You're going to find it there. So, I highly recommend that series. It's my best-selling series. It's doing really well.
And John, for
Relic.
your relics.
Relics.
Relics of the Dark Autumn's the first book. Start there. And if I may, I'm going to give you my website address. It's relicsbook.com. Relics, plural, books, plural.com. And all my books are on Amazon like DA, but it's easier to go to my website and find them. That way you don't have to worry about spelling my name. So,
Yeah. And I'll put all your, make sure I put your website and link the Amazon author's page and all that good stuff in the description. So you guys will be able, and anything else you guys would like, so that everyone can find you guys and check out your books and hopefully purchase some. And
appreciate it. Thank you.
So I'll get that all in there so that they can find that. And I really thank you guys for joining me tonight.
Thanks for
Great
having me.
discussion.
Thank you for having us. I really enjoyed it. It's nice to meet you too.
Oh, it's very nice to meet you as well. Whether Bigfoot is a flesh and blood, an ancient giant, or America's most persistent mystery, these stories have walked alongside our history for generations. Again, thank you, DA and John, for joining us for this discussion. And remember, history never truly dies. It just finds new ways to haunt us. Until next week, keep digging into the darkness.